All right, hello and welcome. So it's a crazy day today in Last Epoch EHG news, and I want to talk about it a little bit. So I've already talked about this a bit on my stream, but I had to end early for unrelated reasons, and I wanted to put something out video wise. This is going to be probably completely uncut. It's off the cuff. I don't have like an outline of things to say. I have a general sense of what I want to talk about, but this is going to be mostly me just kind of talking about it, rambling a little bit. I apologize. But I think it's something that's really important to talk about because it's getting a lot of controversy, understandably. So let's dive into what's happening here. So basically, what's happened is Tencent has bought a partial interest in EHG. They have part ownership. Getting down to the meat and potatoes here, there's a lot of talk here from Judd just about like, where we've been in the past, what we thought about, having some sort of investment. But what we really care about is kind of right here. So Judd says, luckily, after nearly 18 months, I began talks with the team from Tencent Games, who were already fans of Last Epoch and had followed us for quite some time. They had witnessed our ability to produce and release content for nearly 4 years in early access, grow a team, and grow an enthusiastic player base. Their team played the game thoroughly and came into the conversation with the level of enthusiasm and trust in us that we were looking for, due to their passion for Last Epoch, but most importantly because of their willingness to let us design, create, operate, and grow how we see fit. We have accepted a low equity investment from Tencent Games. Now, if you're not familiar with Tencent Games, it basically feels like they own half or more of the gaming industry. It's not actually true, but they own a lot of stuff. They're a Chinese company. For example, they own like 87%-ish of Grinding Gear Games, the PoE's parent company. So they have a controlling interest in Grinding Gear Games and therefore in Path of Exile. They own a whole lot of other stuff too. Their hands are in just about every pie, it seems like. They had at least partial interest in Wilson before it released. I think they still do. I'm actually not sure what their controlling interest is there, but at one point they had invested in them as well. So they have a tendency to invest in ARPGs along with other games. They are a multi-billion dollar company, and they have a bit of a spotty history as far as games they've invested in. GGG, PoE have operated effectively the same as when they were not owned by Tencent, so nothing changed there. Obviously, Wilson had some issues that may or may not have been related to the investment from Tencent. They released far too early. There may or may not have been pressure from Tencent. We just don't know. That's pretty much a closed door. We don't really get any insight into what happens with Wilson because they don't tell their community anything. But that could have been an issue. We don't know. There is a spotty history generally with Tencent, where sometimes it works out just fine, sometimes it doesn't. So understandably, some people are worried about what this means for EHG and for Last Epoch's future. So here's what Judd says the investment's going to do for EHG. It's going to guarantee the stability of our development pipeline through the full 1.0 release of Last Epoch, allow funds for required hardware like more testing machines and server infrastructure to support multiplayer, allowing us to hire and contract industry experts and consultants for the most challenging aspects of development and live operations, allow us to expand our team, allow us marketing capital for the 1.0 release of the game, means more people, more players to share a Terra with, and ensure our stability and growth as a studio for years to come. So these all sound like great things. Of course, these are all things that we want them to have, and they're good for us as players. If this all works out the way that it's worded here, then everything is great, right? There's no issues here. But of course, we're only getting what they want us to know. So there's more that we need to sort of uncover here. For example, what does it mean that they have a low equity investment from Tencent Games? So I did follow up with them, and Judd did answer. Judd, by the way, wrote this. Judd is the lead, I guess you could say, the controlling. I don't even think controlling is the right word. The lead, the top person at EHG. That's really hard to understand exactly what their spots are. He's the game director. There you go. He's the game director. So he plays that lead role. So he's telling us, it's all great, low equity investment. We have all the control. They don't, and in fact, later down here, he elaborates more. We have all the control over everything. They don't have any control whatsoever. But still, it's good to know, okay, well, how much, do they actually own? So I did follow up and ask, let's see, where was the answer? There's so many comments on this because, everyone really cares about this. So can you be more transparent about the low equity investment? What does it mean? Is this partial ownership, loan to be repaired, publishing deal, something else? It's part of, this is the part that will be most important for the community to understand. Now, low equity investment does just mean, it means ownership. So it is the case they had ownership, but still it's not clear if it's just ownership, how much ownership, if a loan's also involved, if there's publishing involved. And Judd did answer this. He says, and actually in 2 posts, he answers that they do own a small percentage of the total equity of the company. The way this agreement was made, that small equity share does not come with any control over our design and development as a studio. Then he also followed up with that they own less than 25%. So this is good right here. Getting an actual figure, even if it's not exactly the number, it still gives us a good idea what it means for that controlling interest and likelihood of it being bigger later. Less than 25% is generally a good thing for anyone who's concerned about Tencent being involved. Knowing that they're under 25% means that someone at EHG still has a controlling interest, you would think, unless they all have less than 25%. And we just don't know that. We're going to assume, though, that Judd or someone else has more than 25% and therefore has final say. That doesn't mean, though, that can't change. So there's some concerns here that I think are completely fair. For example, just because they have 25% now doesn't mean they won't in the future. What this does, it opens the door for potentially having future investment opportunities in the company. And it also just establishes that it's that the seal is broken, so to speak. Until this point, EHG was wholly owned, internally, it was wholly independently owned and operated. There were no other interests whatsoever outside of feedback from the community. No one that actually had a financial interest and therefore reason to push them one way or another. Well, that's now changed. Sure, Tencent can't actually make them do anything. It doesn't mean they can't apply pressure. And also not, considering their own expertise, use that as leverage against EHG. Hey, yeah, you guys are doing it this way, but it's wrong. And we know because of all of our years and, games XYZ do it better this way, and this works out better for them. So one worry is, well, what happens if LE falters even a little bit? Let's say that, one quarterly earnings statement isn't quite as high as you'd expect. Judd did make it clear that they do have to give financial reports to Tencent, so they are going to be checking in on them. What happens when one of these is lower than expected? All of a sudden, is there pressure applied by Tencent? Like, hey, maybe your business model is not working the way it should. Consider these other business models. Maybe we should work with this, use our infrastructure, whatever it might be. These start to become real possibilities that yesterday did not seem like possibilities because no one had a financial interest. So there's a legitimate concern here that when you have this, even if they don't have a controlling interest, you have this large, very, very, the difference between Tencent and EHG as far as market capital and revenue is it's not even comparable. It's ridiculous how much more control or more power within the gaming industry Tencent has versus EHG. So you always have to wonder and worry, is that gonna affect some decisions that are made in the future that otherwise wouldn't have been? So that is definitely a concern. The other thing to bear in mind here is we have to trust what Judd, MoxJet, by the way, is Judd. I don't think I made it clear enough before. MoxJet is Judd. That's just his handle. The game director. We have to trust what he's saying here, and what's being said has been said almost every single time. Almost every single time a game has had this happen to them, where they have a new partner, some new partial ownership. They just about every time will tell you, guys, we haven't lost any control here. We have all of the control. They don't tell us anything. It's totally fine, you guys. Don't worry about it. And then 6 months later, something happens and you realize that was never the case to begin with. Now, from my experience with Judd, which at this point I've been, dealing with EHG in some capacity for over 2 years, he is not someone to say something he doesn't believe. So I think we can believe Judd when he says, guys, we didn't give up any controlling interest here. Insofar as he believes that. He believes that he hasn't given up any. And he very well may be right. That might be correct. It's just now we have to trust that he's right about what he thinks. And there are some reasons to, be a little concerned about that. It's not like EHG has never gone back on something that they've said before. For example, the game was supposed to launch, I believe it was a $15 box price at launch. It was $35 in early access, $15 at launch. Long time ago, they gave that up. They had an announcement that said, guys, we said 15, but it's 35. 35 is what it's going to be. We want to be a lot more ambitious, so 35 it is. Understandable, but still not what they said. They took back something they had stated before. They just did this recently, in fact, with the most recent patch forecast, where they had said, "Hey guys, we have all of these endgame systems that we've planned since Kickstarter. Well, 2 of those we're not planning anymore. Sorry. We're going to partially replace them with a different system, and the other one we just don't even think it fits anymore." So that's gone. People actually invested in Kickstarter, with these things as expectations for them. Does that mean they shouldn't have done that? Not necessarily. Like, if it's actually legitimately way better for the game, if the game has gone a different direction, then of course that's what you do. But it does outline that just because they think something in the future is going to happen, it doesn't mean it's going to. They're not, gods. They're not all knowing. Just because Judd thinks that they're never going to lose control of anything because of this deal, because of the way that they've established it, doesn't guarantee that's the case. So this is an area where I think, as players who loved the fact that EHG was fully independent and didn't have to answer to anybody, have some reasons to be concerned. Not because they think that Judd is trying to pull a fast one over on them. I really don't think that's the case. But that just because Judd's a human and EHG members are human, and they're dealing with a company that has way more experience with negotiations and business acquisitions than they do. Like, that's what Tencent does. This is their expertise area. So just because Judd thinks that this can't turn into a situation of full control or even partial control or pressure to release early or whatever you name it, monetization changes, doesn't guarantee that it won't. And so I think it's fair that the community has these concerns. Not to the extent where there are definitely people like, you know what, Tencent's involved, I'm out. I get why you're saying that. I don't like Tencent either. This was kind of a nightmare scenario for me. I did not want to see Tencent involved. But I don't think it's fair to say just because Tencent's involved, we should no longer support the game. When they only have like a less than 25% controlling interest. And we've had reason to trust EHG up to this point. I think that's a little hasty. I do. I think it's hasty to say just because Tencent's involved at all. Again, there are other games where they've meddled very little, if at all. GGG, PoE is pretty much untouched as far as I can tell. Now, there's 2 things to remember about PoE. One, it was already highly successful, making, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue when they were purchased. And also, it already had a pretty, I don't want to call it invasive, let's call it aggressive monetization system. It was not pay to win. It was pay for convenience, but then it was also very expensive. If you wanted to buy a pair of wings, it was like $50 frickin'. And we don't know what the cost is going to be for the cosmetics in Last Epoch yet. They haven't established that. So there's some room here for Tencent to be like, hey, yeah, those, let's say EHG wants to be a lot more reasonable. Like, they only want to sell their wings for $10. And then, maybe they don't make as much money as they thought they would or that they really wanted to. And now Tencent's like, yeah, that's why PoE is selling them for 50. Have you considered increasing the price? This is how these things happen. They don't happen like all at once. It's over time. It's just, in steps. And so we're just going to have to see. Like that's what it comes down to. It's not fair to jump ship completely now. I just don't think that's certainly not what I'm going to do. And if I had to give it like on odds of this going really, really badly, I still think the odds are fairly low. Like, I don't think it's super likely that Judd is just completely off his rocker on this, has no idea what he's talking about, and in 6 months, Tencent has full control over the company and they're changing everything. That's almost damn near impossible as far as I'm concerned. The real concern is like small changes that make the product worse for the consumer. And the reason why that's concerning is just because it's Tencent, and Tencent is a money-driven company, and that's what they care about. Let's not, beat around the bush on this. Tencent is a overarching parent-style company that does not care about the quality of the product unless that quality means money. What they care about is money, maximizing their profits, and they'll do it however they need to. Now, fortunately, they're not like, in fact, someone here mentions Gamigo. Like, if you've ever watched any of the information on Gamigo, they go in and they just completely destroy an MMO. They just monetize. They take an MMO that's already like on the downside, and they pay to win it, and they're free to play, and they pay to win the shit out of it until it's like just destroyed. But they'll make enough money out of doing that they'll make their investment in more. That's not Tencent's MO. They are much more about long-term sustainability of their games. So I don't see this going to a point to where they're just going to completely just destroy LE as a game. It'll just be minor quote unquote. It'll be incremental changes to the structure of the game that may cause some of us to not find it to be the same philosophy as we bought into. We wanted a game. I wanted a game that had no pay to win elements and no pay for convenience if I get away with it, reasonable cosmetics, and really focused on gameplay over anything, and community feedback, making sure the community is heard. And so far, that's what we've had. And we're just going to have to hope at this point that Tencent doesn't change that. But time is going to tell. I don't think we can say for now that's definitely going to happen. I don't think we can say for now that's definitely not going to happen. It's just going to be a waiting game at this point. I will continue to support this game until I feel like I cannot anymore, until I feel like things have changed. So I'll be here for a good long while, I would expect, at the very least. Even if things went poorly, they're just not going to happen immediately. And I'll continue to tell you guys how I feel about it, and be honest and upfront. And even if it costs me any chance at being, a full-time streamer, YouTuber, so be it. That's just how I am. I'm going to tell you like I feel, and that's what I'm doing here, and I'll continue to do that. So here's the hoping everything works out with this deal. In some ways it could be really, really good. Of course, having lots of marketing money at 1.0 is great. Being able to get more infrastructure, great. Getting more employees, great. But we'll see what the long-term ramifications are as we go. We'll talk about them as they happen. Hopefully they don't happen. We don't have to talk about them. We'll just have to see. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. That's all I've got to say here. We'll have more content coming out here in the next week leading up to the new patch. And then, of course, more content for the patch. I'll be streaming just about every day for a while there on the patch release. I hope you have a great time in Last Epoch. Try not to get too worked up about, this change with Tencent. Hopefully it all works out. We'll just have to see. Thanks again. I will see you all again real soon.